Stop for a moment. What I am about to tell you completely upends a widespread misconception about modern etiquette, and it will fundamentally change the way you conduct yourself from this very day. There is a pervasive notion that etiquette is merely an artificial construct, a rigid set of archaic rules designed to control us, to hem us in, and to force us into a dull, uniform mold. People see it as nothing more than a social mask, a relic of a classist past used to exclude those who don't know which fork to use. But that is a remarkably superficial reading of the situation. Real etiquette was never born out of a desire to repress. It exists to make coexistence possible between human beings who possess vastly different desires, temperaments, and sensibilities. It is the grammar of relationships, and just like the grammar of a language, its purpose isn't to limit thought. Its purpose is to make thought intelligible. If everyone spoke their own private language, communication would collapse. Likewise, if everyone acted solely on their momentary impulses, every social bond would become volatile and unstable. This is why certain rules, even as they evolve in form, remain absolutely vital in substance. The sacred space of the table. Consider the dinner table. Once upon a time, it was a social minefield. The precise placement of cutlery, the unwavering order of courses, gestures codified with almost obsessive rigor. You might remember the old anxiety of working from the outside in with your silverware. Today, that burden has largely lifted. In many circles, we eat with far more liberty. We talk over one another. We keep our smartphones within arm's reach. And here is where the fracture opens. While the formal rules have relaxed, the purpose of the table has not changed one bit. The table is a relational space. It is not merely about sustenance. It is about presence. Think of the business lunch or the family Sunday roast. When you check your phone while someone is speaking to you, you aren't just breaching an old-fashioned rule. You are performing a microaggression of neglect. It is a wordless declaration that whatever is happening on a glowing screen 5,000 miles away is more important than the soul sitting right in front of you. Regardless of the era, that remains a profound failing of character. We are drowning in behaviors that have become normal simply because they are common. But ubiquity is no measure of value. A shared error is still an error. This brings us to an ageless rule. Presence is a gift. To be truly present with your eyes, your ears, and your undivided attention is perhaps the highest form of etiquette in the modern age. It carries more weight than any codified gesture ever could. In a world defined by distraction, the person who is truly present stands out as an anomaly of excellence. The language of attire, harmonization versus conformity. Another area where etiquette has shifted dramatically is how we dress. We've moved from strict dress codes for every occasion to a world of blurred lines. Trainers in the boardroom, Savile Row jackets paired with denim, or the athleisure takeover of the high street. This freedom has undeniably made life more dynamic, but we must tread carefully. Freedom does not eliminate meaning. Dressing is never a neutral act. It is a language. Every choice communicates something: care, slovenliness, respect, distance, or belonging. Anyone who believes clothes don't matter is simply ignoring a form of communication that everyone else is still busy perceiving. The timeless rule here is simple, yet frequently forgotten. Dress to suit the context. This isn't about conforming, it's about harmonizing. Think of attending a wedding in casual shorts because it's hot and you want to be yourself. You aren't being authentic. You are drawing the focus away from the couple and toward your own comfort. To conform is to erase yourself. To harmonize is to step into an environment with intelligence and grace, acknowledging the importance of the event through your appearance. True elegance lies in that middle ground, being recognizable without being out of place. The new dynamics of connection. Perhaps the most radical shift has occurred in the relations between men and women. The traditional playbook has been torn up. Who opens the door? Who settles the bill? Who makes the first move? Everything is now a negotiation. This has created liberty, but also a great deal of uncertainty. When the rules vanish, people are forced to interpret every single interaction in real time, and not everyone has the intuition to do so. The result is often a kind of social clumsiness. Gestures that were once clear are now fraught with the potential for misunderstanding. Many men, fearing they will offend, have abandoned chivalry entirely. Many women, fearing they will appear weak, have rejected help they might actually appreciate. The solution isn't to regrow a rigid set of Victorian rules, nor is it to abandon manners entirely. It is to recover the principle that sustained them in the first place: care. Opening a door for someone isn't important in itself. It is important because of what it expresses: an awareness of the other, a mark of respect, a desire to be helpful. If you hold on to that principle, the form becomes secondary. You stop asking what is correct in the abstract and start asking what is appropriate for that specific person in that specific moment. Etiquette becomes alive. It stops being a manual and becomes a sensibility. The power and poison of silence is an element that is consistently undervalued today. Silence. In the British tradition, the stiff upper lip was often a caricature of emotional repression. But there is a deeper, more refined version of this: the ability to hold one's tongue. Knowing when not to speak is an exquisite form of education. It is the refusal to fill every void with noise, the restraint to not always have the final word in an argument. In a world that screams for attention, silence becomes a mark of distinction. I am not talking about a passive, cold silence. I am talking about a full silence, one that creates space for the other, that listens, and that observes. When you allow someone else to finish their thought without interruption, you are practicing a form of high-level hospitality. You are giving them the room to exist. However, there is a hidden risk here. If used poorly, silence can become a subtle, even cruel form of power. The silent treatment, or the calculated withholding of a response, can be more damaging than a shouted insult. Authentic etiquette uses silence to welcome, never to exclude or punish. The invisible architecture of hierarchy. We often hear that we live in a flat world. Modern offices boast open-plan layouts. CEOs wear hoodies and tell their juniors to call them by their first names. We speak of horizontality and team collaboration as if the pyramid has been leveled. Yet hierarchies have not disappeared. They have simply become invisible. And navigating an invisible hierarchy is far more difficult than navigating a visible one. This is where etiquette acts as a vital compass. True manners allow you to navigate these waters without losing your soul. It teaches you how to address someone with more responsibility without being servile, and how to treat those with less responsibility without being arrogant. The most revealing test of a person's character is how they treat someone who can do absolutely nothing for them. Watch how a high-flying executive treats a waiter, a janitor, or a junior intern. If they are charming to the board but dismissive to the staff, their etiquette is a fraud. It is a tool of manipulation, not a way of being. Authentic etiquette maintains a steady line of respect for all, adjusted in form but never in value. Etiquette as a tool of influence. Ultimately, etiquette is a form of power, not in a cynical sense, but as a capacity for influence. The person who makes others feel at ease is always sought after. The person who creates harmony in a room is always remembered. The person who knows how to move with measure, who knows when to arrive, when to leave, and how to bridge a gap between two conflicting parties, is the person people listen to. This isn't magic, it is structure. In an increasingly noisy and chaotic world, this structure becomes an enormous competitive advantage. But because it is a power, it can be abused. One can simulate the perfect gentleman or the gracious host to manipulate others or to build a false brand. But here's the catch. Substance always emerges. You can fake the manners for an evening, perhaps even for a season, but eventually the mask slips. When it does, the person who built only a hollow shell of form loses all credibility. You cannot build authentic etiquette by starting with a rule book. You must start with how you view others. The choice of resistance. If you see the person next to you as an obstacle or a tool, etiquette is just a strategy, a hollow tactic. If you see them as a presence to be honored, etiquette becomes your natural state. People can feel the difference, even as they can't quite name it. Everything we have discussed, the table, the dress, the silence, the hierarchy, requires a transition from mere understanding to embodiment. It is easy to agree with these words. It is incredibly difficult to live them. Why? Because it requires discipline. It requires the effort to step outside of your own ego, even when you are tired, grumpy, or in a rush. It requires you to look up from your phone when you'd rather disappear into it. It requires an internal ethics that isn't imposed from the outside by a schoolmarm, but chosen from within as a way of standing in the world. Etiquette is not nostalgia. It is not a pining for a bygone era of top hats and carriages. It is a form of resistance. In a world that pushes us towards superficiality, relentless haste, and a me-first egoism, choosing to be mannered is a radical countercultural act. It is a silent but potent choice to slow down and acknowledge the humanity of others. It creates a ripple effect. When you act with grace, those around you often unconsciously begin to adjust their own behavior. You create a microclimate of civility. This path is not for everyone. It requires a depth of character and a level of self-awareness that is, quite frankly, the rarest thing in the world today. It requires you to be a grown-up in a room full of children shouting for attention. But for those who master it, the rewards are not just social, they are profoundly human.